Welcome back to JK Sports 7. I'm Joel. We'll do something a little different today. Hope you guys like it. With the draft coming up, this has me thinking about, historically what have teams done um, beyond the first round. I think that we get so excited about the first round, and I love doing mock drafts, and you see mock drafts on every channel and every YouTube channel and ESPN, NFL Network. Get so hyped up on the first round picks, and rightfully so. I mean, those are the key picks in the draft. But I wanted to dive in a little deeper and look at non-first round picks, kind of great players in franchise history that were outside the first round pick. So I got this idea to kind of look at the Steelers. That's my favorite team, as you can see, kind of behind me and representing the Steely beam here is going to be looking at the Steelers' top 10 draft picks of all time. I'm going to preface with the fact that this is my memory. I started watching the Steelers back in about 1992 to kind of date myself a little bit. So a lot of those players and kind of going back and look at the Steel Curtain and players like that kind of went to this list. So there's going to be some recency bias. I can't help that. I just know what I know, the players I know, the stats I look at is all I can control. So I want to dive in and kind of look at this a little bit and see what you guys think about this and kind of go from there. So we'll hop into it and look at it here. So like I said, this is this top 10 draft picks of all time, or at least my memory. Again, I'll preface with that. So I just want to first look at how the Steelers draft, what's their history with drafting, what that looks like first off. So first draft they did was 1936. First pick was Bill Shakespeare from Notre Dame. Most career starts from a draft pick was Ben Roethlisberger. He started 249 games. Obviously, quarterback, he played for a long time, was a huge instrumental fixture in the Steelers franchise. Currently, Cam Hayward leads the team. He's an active player at 211 starts. The most decorated draft we've had is 1974. Most of you guys can remember that. Steelers fans, 4 Hall of Famers were drafted in that draft. Crazy. Something I thought was interesting was Penn State was actually the school with the most amount of draft picks from any college. So 14 players from Penn State were drafted by the Steelers. Closely behind was Michigan, who had 12. Georgia had 12. Pittsburgh had 12. Ohio State had 12. What I think is interesting here is how many schools are really close to Pittsburgh. That's what kind of threw me off there. Most of the high draft schools are from the local area. I think that's intentional. I think Pittsburgh and the Rooney family wants to stay close and kind of build that Northeast culture a little bit. Look at big schools that Pittsburgh didn't really draft a whole lot of from. Even like a Boise State, only one player from Boise State. Um, Texas Southern, Texas A&M Commerce, some small schools there, one apiece. Indiana State, one. But even like some with a few more that you would assume would have more picks than they actually did. Like Oregon State only had two, Houston only had two, Memphis only had two, um, Cincinnati with only four, some Oklahoma State with four with their big powerhouse back earlier in, back a few decades ago, big powerhouse. Iowa with four, Oregon on the West Coast with five, USC with only five, which is really surprising. You would think with the lineage they had for so long, there'd be more picks. But again, West Coast, does that affect the Steelers yet? I'm not sure. But only 5 picks came from USC. So I thought that was a little interesting looking at what schools Pittsburgh drafts from. And then again, Steelers is a great drafting franchise. 16 Hall of Famers were drafted from the Steelers, which I think is crazy. And we'll dive in that. A few of those I'm going to discount as not really Steelers draft picks. And we'll touch on that here in just a second. But I think that just shows how good the Steelers have drafted throughout there. And there's some players that aren't in the Hall of Fame that are probably due for the Hall of Fame. Looks like a Ben Roethlisberger hasn't made it yet, but is definitely going to make it here in the next couple of years. But I want to look at kind of those beyond the first round draft picks and kind of look at those later round picks that you may forget about that the Steelers made. So some honorable exclusions that I took off the board here was Len Dawson. He was a Steeler drafted 1937. I don't think anybody remembers him as a Pittsburgh Steeler. I think he played 3 seasons and then he went to Kansas City and had a much more decorated career. John Unitas, I'm sorry, Len Dawson never played. He was drafted and he didn't make the training camp. He didn't play anything. John Unitas played 3 years with Pittsburgh. 1955 again. Nobody remembers John Unitas as a Steeler. He's a cold in everyone's mind. Jim Fink is a Hall of Famer, more of as an executive rather than as a player. But I had to put him on the exclusion list because he doesn't really qualify for the list there. Let me move my face out of the way here a little bit so this can a little more clear. Warren Lahr, 32nd round, 44 interceptions, which is great. He's a Cleveland Brown legend. Drafted by the Steelers, not a Steeler notable. People know him as the Brown. That's what he's known for. So I took him off the list here. James Harrison would have probably been on the very tippy top of this list. He wasn't a draft pick, though. He's an undrafted free agent, 2002. He didn't even go for undrafted free agent to starting roster. He kind of bounced around the league a little bit, eventually landed on the Steelers. But he would have been, in the top echelon of guys there. And then Mike Vrabel, either Hall of Famer or going to be Hall of Famer. Again, nobody remembers him as a Steeler. He played a few years. It's weird even as a Steelers fan looking at a picture of Mike Vrabel in a Steelers uniform. He's a New England Patriot, I think, to most people's minds. Now, great coach. He great future ahead of him. But again, drafted by the Steelers 97, third round. I don't think anybody remembers him as a Pittsburgh Steeler. So I took him off the list as an exclusion. And like I said, all first round picks I didn't include in this list as well. So that took a lot of guys off the list. It made it a little more difficult for me to kind of make the list. I could have gone, top 10 guys and put those guys all first round picks. But I don't want to do that. I thought that was boring, not exciting. I wanted to kind of bring up names that we may not have realized were later round picks because their careers turned out so well. We forget where they're drafted on. So I took all those first round picks off. So let's dive in list at number 10. And I'll preface it, this is my opinion. You guys can think I'm completely wrong. Please tell me in the comments who I forgot, who should have been where, what the correct ranking were. I'd love to kind of hear you guys' thoughts on it all. So we'll dive in the list here. We're going to start off with Dermontti Dawson. Drafted the second round, 1998, played for the Steelers from 88 to 2000, 7 Pro Bowls, 6 All Pros, and he's a Hall of Famer. He continued the legacy of another Hall of Famer that might be on this list at center, solidifying that center that was brought on. Mike Pouncey followed that. We have all high hopes for Zach Frazier, continue that legacy, but really that foundational rock in the middle of the offensive line. Kind of at a time, we made the Super Bowl in the early 90s. He was kind of centerpiece there. You can't find stats. So I can't give you a bunch of stats about him, but if you know, you know. Dermontti Dawson was a monster on that offensive line. Solidified the offensive line, helped us get back to the Super Bowl in the early 90s. So I had him on the list. I had him. I toyed with him where he would go, but I think he fell at number 10. I think that's a good slot for him there. Moving on. We're going old school here. L.C. Greenwood on that Steel Current defense in the 70s was drafted in the 10th round. Yes, young guys. There are more than 7 rounds in the NFL draft. There used to be a bunch more. He played for Steelers for 13 years. 78 career sacks. That's the unofficial number. They didn't track sacks in the NFL until 1982. L.C. Greenwood was a staple on that D line with Mean Joe, solidifying that front four to really let us those 4 Super Bowl championships in the 70s. Great player. It's hard to kind of rank these what stats are because the stats are so unofficial. You kind of look at different sites and different numbers. They're kind of all over the place. So some players you'll see here have stats, some don't. I can only find a whole bunch. But with this 78 official unofficial stats. I won't say unofficial because they won't track them well. Fourth in franchise history, and you think about all the great players who play that Steelers defense out the years, being number four is really high. I think with the other players on the defense, it kind of makes him slip a little bit. They could have been a lot higher with those numbers, but I think number nine fits him based on his contributions. Um, Great player. I think the Joe Greens overshadow him a little bit. He could, I think other positions he would have even higher, but with Mean Joe on there, he's the number one guy. So I think he hurts on this list a little bit. But the fact that he's a 10th round pick and he was so good, I had to put him on the list here. But moving on here, Greg Lloyd. This may be a controversial pick. Greg Lloyd was a monster. He was a beast. He was a 6th round pick in 1987. Played for the Steelers for 10 years. And look at these stats here: fourth in franchise history in tackles, eighth in franchise history in sacks, 11 career interceptions. This dude, if you remember him, the high neck roll, just patrolling the field, just scared people on there. And this was a time the Steelers had some great linebackers. I mean, the Steelers have always had great linebackers, but I think Chad Brown, Greg Lloyd, Levon Kirkland, these guys really were the second coming of the steel curtain. I've been watching him. He was one of those guys when I first started watching the Steelers. He was a dominating force. So I have a lot of good memories of watching him and Kirkland and Brown on that defense. I think Greg Lloyd was the main one for me. That's like he makes a list over like a Greg Lloyd or other guys like that. But great player, great find in the 6th round of the draft for the Steelers. I think this proves what they can do later rounds. And you see some more 6th round picks in this list. This shows the Steelers can find talent late in the draft. John Stallworth, I mean, crazy career with the Steelers, a 4th round pick. This was the same draft that took Lynn Swann in the 1st round. So those two created a big duo for Terry Bradshaw, which led that offense, with Franco Harris and stuff like that, to those 4 Super Bowls. Played 14 years with the Steelers, 531 receptions, 63 touchdowns, 8,723 yards, retired for the franchise record in all those. He currently is at number 3, um, foreshadowing the 2 guys on this list. But he was a dominant force wide receiver. Lynn Swann was with the aerobatic, kind of making those crazy catches. But Lynn Swann was that staple guy, getting the receptions, getting the touchdowns, getting the yards to lead the Steelers to great numbers. So I wanted to push him higher, but I feel with him and Swann, how much success was Stallworth's career because of Swann on the other side? I don't know. But with 2 guys in front of him that were again late round picks, number 7 just feels right for him. I may be wrong. He may be higher, but my record, I didn't watch him play in his heyday, so that also could contribute. But great player, Hall of Famer, deserves it completely. And number 7, just a great guy. I remember hearing that the Steelers actually want to take him over Swann, and they're like, we can get Stallworth later, or let's take Swann in the 1st round. We can Stallworth a little later. That's what he did. I mean, I think numbers wise, Stallworth had a better career than Swann, so a great Steelers legend for sure. We're going back to the Steel Curtain, and you'll see we kind of bounce between a couple areas here. Jack Lambert. I mean, you just look at his pictures of him smiling with no teeth. He was a fear. He brought the fear to defenses. Just hit people mean, angry, just forearms, just aggressive. But he was a good player. 1,400 career tackles. Played for the Steelers from 1974 1984. It's not a super long career, but an impactful one for sure. He was a 2nd round pick in 1974, was part of all those Super Bowl winning teams. He's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Just look at that. Look at that stance right there. That neck roll he's got going on. I wouldn't want to be near that guy. Just a great Steelers legend for sure. If you can see back here, his bobblehead is behind me. Just a great Steelers guy. High on the list. Number 6 just feels like a good spot for him on that list. Antonio Brown, we have to take away what he did after he left Pittsburgh. I look at his time with Pittsburgh. There was a time when he was the best receiver in the NFL, and for that to be a sixth round pick is phenomenal. I think in most franchises with his numbers, he'd be the greatest receiver of that franchise. Um, played with Steelers only for a short time, but the numbers he put up almost 1,000 receptions, 12,000 yards, 83 touchdowns, off the field stuff aside. And I did factor in a little bit. He slid a slide or two because of that stuff, and because he did leave Pittsburgh. This is after that. He wasn't a Pittsburgh, Steeler his entire career. I did penalize him a little bit, but I think that the 8 years with Pittsburgh were phenomenal. He started off slow, special teams, punt returner, kick returner. Then when he got a chance to be the star receiver, he went off. It was electric. For a lot of Steelers fans now, this is the guy they remember is Antonio Brown as their guy. Me being a little bit older, there's another guy who's coming on the list a little bit later, who I remember the Steelers receiver, but for a lot of guys, this is who they think of when they think of Pittsburgh receivers, is Antonio Brown. We're going back old school here. Jack Ham, phenomenal player. Pro Football Hall of Famer, drafted second round, 1972, so the beginning of the Steel Curtain defense. Played for the Steelers from 71 to 82. I looked this up, I checked this 3 times. 53 career interception and fumble recoveries, which is the most in NFL history for a non-defensive back. Doesn't get as much hype as like a Jack Lambert, but if you watch the film and the tape, this guy was the centerpiece of the defense. More level-headed for the 70s defense, but led that defense for sure. Was a key piece to all 4 Super Bowl wins. Great player number 4. Now in the top 3, it got really difficult here on the placement of here. So I could be completely. I think I get the names right. I think that the order may change. Let me know after. How would you order these 3? But I'm happy with the list here. I'm starting off with Hines Ward. This is the receiver I'm talking about. This is to me what every Steelers wide receiver tries to be. 1,000 receptions, 12,000 yards, 85 touchdowns, all franchise records. Beyond that, he brought the boom. He would go across that middle and straight up hit Ray Lewis. And that is a scary, scary thing to do. And he did it. And he blocked like no one else. I think that's what Steelers look for now is a blocking receiver who can make catches. We've seen this recently, like Allen Robinson, to try to bring someone in to block and be a receiver. Didn't really work. Last year, they brought in another guy, Van Jefferson, try to be that mold. He's not. There's only one Hines Ward, and you won't see him play this anymore because receivers aren't asked to do that as much. Receivers are asked to stay on the outside, go deep, catch the ball. There's no fear going across the middle. Hines Ward was in the heyday, as you guys remember, early 2000s, when you went across the middle and you paid for it. And he would do that, and he'd get hit hard as possible. He'd get up and smile. This, to me, is a Steelers guy through and through, just toughness. When I think of the franchise, he's the guy I think of in so many aspects. Not a Hall of Famer yet. We'll see if the stats get him there, but as a Steelers Hall of Famer, for sure. Like I said, the receptions, the production's there, leads all the categories for Steelers. No one's really that close to him that's active that can kind of overtake him. And then just that leader, toughness mentality, early 2000s, 2010s, he's the guy. Number 86 for me. Why I started watching was one of the first guys. I'm like, this is what I love about the Steelers. So I had him on the list at number 3. Just feels right. Next up, we got Mike Webster. I think again, with centers, not going to have the stats, but if you know, you know. The original Steelers center in that line, blocking for Franco, just powering that line, just bullying in the trenches. Mike Webster is the guy. And for a 5th-round pick in 1974, again, he played for almost 14 years, 9 Pro Bowls, 6 All Pros, and a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Again, that toughness they had in the 70s, he was one of those reasons we hated them in the offensive side. We had Lambert and Mean Joe and L.C. Greenwood and these guys. I think Mike Webster led that in the offense. He established with the Steelers, and you can see its effect now. Steelers draft centers, and we draft them high because we want to continue the legacy. Like I said, with Mike Webster, Damari Dawson, Marquise Pouncey, now Zach Frazier, it's a legacy. It's something impactful to be a Steelers center, and he started all that. That tough ground and pound type of play, I would say, starts with him. So I think the impact on the franchise is huge, and that's why he has to go on the list. I think number 2 is a good spot for him there. So now we're down number 1. If you can guess who it is, I'm not sure. His impact on the game has just been huge. And I think he's probably one of the greatest players in his position of all time, and that is Mel Blount. He changed the way the league officiates DBs. He would just maul receivers, just maul them. He only has 57 interceptions because nobody threw the ball his way. He shut that side completely down. You didn't go that side. You look at Mel Blount. He was going to maul your receiver, tackle them, and he was not going to run his route. He was a 3rd-round pick in 1970. He played for the Steelers for about 13 years, 5 Pro Bowls, Hall of Famer. He helped that defense to get to where they could those 4 Super Bowls. Just a tough guy. If you look at him now, probably the smoothest looking dresser with his cowboy hat on, strolling through facility you ever see. But again, he established that dominant defensive back. And you see that with other guys they drafted. So again, his legacy on the franchise is huge. But I look at he rules were created to make him less effective. And if that happens, how can you not be number 1 on any list? When you talk about players, a mid-round pick, just another great pick that Seals got in that 3rd round that established that defense is huge. So that's my list, and I understand I forgot guys, and so I wanted to take a second in the video to kind of go back to some guys I was thinking about and flirting with the list, and kind of mention them briefly. We'll call them honorable mentions here. About 8 guys here on the list. So let me get myself out of the way here. Again, I mentioned him earlier in the video. Levon Kirkland, again, with those dominating linebackers in the early 2000s. Again, a scary looking dude. LaMarr Woodley. This was probably one of the. I don't buy a whole lot of jerseys. He was one of the jerseys I bought. I loved LaMarr Woodley coming off the edge. A little not as well as known as like a James Harrison on the side of him, but a great player. LaMarr Woodley was fantastic on the edge. A shorter career, but a great guy. Joey Porter. Maybe an oversight mistake not putting Joey Porter on the list. I'm aware of that. 3rd-round pick, 1999. A dominating player at the outside linebacker. He may have. I'm happy with the list, but he's one of those guys that definitely could have been in the top 10 for sure. Jason Gilden, another guy in the early 90s that led the defense. I'm very nostalgic for that time period. That's why I started watching the Steelers, is with the Gildens, the Kirkland, the Lloyds. And so you see that in my list here. Those guys probably maybe push higher than they should have been, but I have fond memories of watching those guys. First game of football, first watching the Steelers. So I had to mention them and put them on the honorable mentions, and then Greg Lloyd got on the list. Ike Taylor, he carried that secondary during the second great defenses of the Steelers, taking the 2 Super Bowls, winning one of them, really being the only corner we really had, with other guys rotating in like Willie Gay and stuff like that. but Ike Taylor was the constant. With his teammate Larry Foote, and again, both fourth-round picks, back-to-back years. Larry Foote not going to get a lot of praise, not going to get probably overlooked in a lot of positions, but he was a staple on that defense and a veteran presence for a lot of young guys in the middle of the defense. Going back to again that D line, the Steel Curd, Ernie Holmes, 8th-round pick in 1971. Again, the Steel Curd. There's so many guys on that Steel Curd that are Hall of Famers or should be Hall of Famers. You kind of pick and choose, and for me, I just don't have the same nostalgia. And just with another stats set, I try to find them, and just Ernie Holmes just wasn't the guy for me. And then a guy that a short career, granted, but all I gotta say is fear the beard. Kiesel, 7th-round pick. So I put him on the list because he's the very last pick of the draft in 2002, and made an impact. It was slow. It was a slow progression. He didn't start away, didn't play tons of years. But at the end of his career, he was a staple in the D line. It was just massively impacting. With Aaron Smith and Casey Hampton, he was that 3rd guy to solidify that front three, the 3-4 defense. This really, and I think he's done a lot of cool stuff in the community as well. And again, me being the age I am, I think that I see more of those things out there. And so he raised up the list for me. I couldn't put him in the top 10. I don't think he was that level of career, but I think he's mentioned as a guy the Steelers got super late in the draft. So that's my list and my thoughts on it. I think like there's a lot of great picks that the Steelers made late in the draft, and I think that shows that there's potential for franchise-changing players outside the first round. Again, the first round gets all the hype, gets all the excitement, but we gotta look beyond just what's in the first round and get those later on picks. I mean, back in the 40s and 30s and even 50s, there was 30 rounds in the draft, 20 rounds in the draft, 15, 20 rounds. So they don't have that anymore. It's only 7. But I think you have some undrafted free agents like a James Harrison making an impact. But I think it's important to look at not just to watch day 1 of the draft, but the days preceding and look at those undrafted free agents they get, because those guys are going to play key roles into how the Steelers' next couple of years are going to come. So, again, I just want to take a few moments, look at the draft history of the Steelers, and kind of share what I found. I thought it was super interesting. If you like videos like this as well, please drop a comment, like below. We'll do more of these. We'll see if we can get Kevin to the Broncos. I think it's super interesting diving deep into that. But again, like, share, comment below. As always, guys, I really appreciate everything you guys do. I'll catch you guys next time. You guys keep it easy.